So today we are joined by Martin Kerr for the Labour Party. If you want to give a introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much, Leighton and Jonathan. I'm Martin Kerr. I'm standing on behalf of the Scottish Labour Party for the Shetland Holyrood constituency in the elections, and I can't believe the election's about 10 days away now. I've enjoyed the process of being an applicant. Being a candidate, and doing all the media pieces and trying to get the Scottish Labour message across. Our manifesto came out a few days ago, so I'm really happy to speak to you today and try to deliver some strong Scottish Labour messages.
So first question, as it looks like we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, what ideas do you have to help young people benefit from the recovery process?
Well, we've put young people really at the centre of our national recovery plan. We've got a very much COVID focus on our election strategy because we think that's the only show in town at the moment. I mean, we've all had this collective trauma over the last year, and Scotland has lost 10,000 people to the virus. We've got 360,000 Scots on furlough, and a huge number that have missed out on cancer screening and things. So in terms of young people, we think they're absolutely key to the recovery. And we're looking at a number of policies. I suppose the first would be that we have a jobs guarantee. So for anyone under 25 that's not in receipt of other benefits, then we will guarantee them a job, because we think that an experience tells us that youth unemployment is already rising, and it can be quite scarring for your long-term sort of outlook. So we want to kind of try to nip that in the bud. So that's a guaranteed job for under 25s. We've also got a training guarantee offer as part of our Jobs for Recovery scheme, and that will be a blend of both the public sector and the private sector. And we've got an additional 5,000 apprenticeships that we're offering. And then again, specifically to our young people, and we'll go on to talk about environmental issues, but we're promoting free bus travel for under 25. So we've got a whole raft of measures that are focused specifically on recognising that COVID has been tough for everyone, but perhaps it's been particularly tough for our young people.
Yeah, thanks. Many people are saying that our generation of young people may become the lost generation. What can your party offer to young people to prevent that?
Well, I think it really cuts across a number of areas. So we have this Scottish work experience guarantee, so that you'll be able to get that invaluable work experience, which will then help you get a job or go into further education. And a lot of people, particularly those from sort of perhaps working class backgrounds or low middle working class backgrounds, can find it hard to access those industries. So that's one of the first measures. But then that's in obviously industry. But then when you look at our education pieces, I mean, for many students still have lost really the best part of a year. So the question is, what are we going to do about that? So we've got a guaranteed reset plan, as well as a personal comeback plan for each pupil, and that will include sort of access to mental health services and a mental health assessment if they wish that, as well as a personal tutoring programme, because so a whole raft of things. But we are the Scottish Labour Party, so there's certainly an element, a nod to our what sort of Labour roots, which is making sure that it's not just a recovery, but it's a fair recovery, that we bring along all the elements of society, not just those who can afford it.
The third question, if you were First Minister for a day, what policies or laws would you bring in?
Well, it's a great question. It frustrates me, as I'm sure it frustrates a lot of other people, that we have such high levels of poverty, particularly child poverty. And I think it should be the cornerstone of the Scottish Government's policy to reduce that poverty and ultimately to eradicate it. And that's very central to the Scottish Labour Party's message. So I think once you have that absolute commitment to that, then that goes a long way. But then it's about what can you do in terms of practical policies, and we've got a range of policies about that, about doubling the Scottish child payment, etc. But I think the best medium through which you can really tackle long-term inequality and long-term poverty, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, is education. I think it's about access to really high quality education, primary, secondary, and universities and colleges. And I feel that those standards in recent years have slipped. And I feel that we allow schools too often to be poor schools or poorly performing schools. And those schools should be, there should be an intervention, you know what I mean, and that should be accountable to ministers in the Scottish Government. So if I had a law, there's probably a range of laws there, but one law would certainly be around not allowing schools to continually be outperformed by schools that say a few miles away that happen to be in a better area.
Yeah, that's really interesting if you were First Minister for the day. Another question here, what were your main interests as a young person?
Well, I was a really politically engaged young child. I grew up in the 80s, so there was a real anti-Thatcher, there was a real Thatcher hostility in Glasgow and in Scotland at the time. So I was a very politically engaged child. Then the Labour Party came to power, and things seemed to get better. So I wasn't so politically involved when I went to university and things, but I had a pretty broad range of interests, played a lot of football, loved doing things like the West Highland Way, the 100-mile walk from just outside Glasgow up to Fort William and camping and things. I would love to have done more of the stuff that you guys doing. Obviously, they didn't have the Scottish Youth Parliament back then. This was obviously the Parliament came in about 98, 99, but I would have loved to have done more of that stuff. I probably wouldn't have had the confidence when I was your age, so well done.
Thank you. And fun fact, the Scottish Youth Parliament is actually a day older than the Scottish Parliament from when it opened.
Cool. No, that's good to know.
So the next one, do you think the UNCRC rights to the child should be in Scots law and in local government as well? Well,
I think when you get an easy question, it's always important just to say yes. So in this case, that's a very easy yes. I'm actually a lawyer myself. I've been a lawyer for over a decade. Qualified as a lawyer in Scotland in 2008. Worked in Scotland for a couple of years, and then worked in London for a number of years and requalified as a lawyer in England too, and then worked overseas. So I think I've got a pretty broad range of experiences, and from what I'm seeing, I'd be very happy to say that should be implemented into Scots law.
I'd say that's the right answer as well. The Scottish Youth Parliament has campaigned for that, and as we're a fundamentally rights-based organisation, that's really important to us. Right. The next question is on climate change. With Glasgow hosting the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, How do you and your party plan on reducing the impact we all have on climate change?
So the Scottish Labour Party have really repositioned themselves as a Green Party, and we've got a host of green policies because we now know collectively and individually that this is the big issue that will define this era and define our contribution to this is what's going to make the difference. So it's important, I think, that anybody who in a position of power or who is seeking a position of power has got that absolute commitment to this issue and the importance of this issue. And in really practical terms, I mean, it's fantastic that we're holding that event later this year, and we hope that it can go ahead in some sort of personable level as opposed to entirely online, but let's see about that. So we're obviously on this journey to a net zero, and we've got a real commitment to renewable energy. But as well as that, we've got really practical policies around things like energy efficiency. And I know that's a big issue in places like Shetland. We have sort of older houses. They tend to be inefficient and sort of wasting a lot of energy. And we also have, it's linked to fuel poverty as well. And I know fuel poverty in the Highlands and Islands is a huge issue. So we see that as a governmental responsibility, and we would have, it's in our manifesto that we have a 10-year plan to upgrade all homes to at least a band C in terms of energy efficiency, and that's a huge insulation boiler replacement programme, but it can be done with that level of commitment that I was referring to earlier, and we would put in place a national housing agency to deliver that.
And next one, what were the key things you wanted to change about the place you grew up?
Well, I grew up in a place called Pollock in Glasgow, which is a scheme, and it was quite a deprived area. It was one of those areas in the 80s that felt very left behind by this government, by the state. There was sort of a fairly common threat of sort of violence. Really, there was particular areas you couldn't go in, streets you couldn't walk down. You would have to manage your route in terms of people you didn't want to run into. The little bit we lived in had a sort of corner of grass, but the corner of grass tended to be like overrun by dog mess and stuff like that. So I suppose you encounter stuff like that and you think, why is this happening? And it's because there's not enough of a political activity in the area to ensure that standards should be driven up in the local communities. So I mean, there's lots of things that I would like to change, and that's one of the reasons why I'm active in the Scottish Labour Party and why I'm seeking election, because clearly, you know what I mean, our streets could be safer, our streets could be cleaner. You know what I mean, people I speak to care about potholes, they care about their bins being collected, they care about their kids' education. So all of this really sort of kind of meat and veg issues actually really matter and can be improved with the right political will.
Thank you. If you could have a dinner party with 3 people who are alive or dead, who would they be and why?
Well, it's a great question. So there's a guy called Darren McGarvey, who is a sort of social commentator and author. I think he's a rapper too, although I've not heard anything in terms of his music. But I read his book, Poverty Safari, a few years ago, and it came out and it had a really big impact on me. Lots of comparable experiences to my own. And he did a podcast on the New Statesman with Chris Deering and with Ricky Ross from Deacon Blue, but I think Deacon Blue's before either of your time. But so he would definitely be one. I think he's a really interesting guy. I think he's got a good steer on political issues and why people sort of have it quite hard. But I think he's also quite a funny guy as well. I've not met him, but I've seen him a lot of the TV stuff he does. So he would be my first guy. The second person, and it's probably a nod to all the environmental issues that we've just been having a chat about, would be Greta Thunberg. And I mean, I think that's probably a bit of an obvious choice, but it's phenomenal the impact that she's had and the role she's now playing. So I think that's a sort of message to us all that one person can make a difference, and I mean what individuals do does really matter. And then the third one is probably a bit more of a political choice. I would go for Mandela, and I think I read his book many years ago now, but just a very inspiring figure who really is one of those characters that show you what you can do and what change can be achieved. So yeah, that would be my three: Darren McGarvey, Greta Thunberg, and Nelson Mandela.
Sounds like
I think that would be a good dinner party.
Sounds like a very entertaining night. Will you promise now, if you get elected to represent Shetland, will you promise to work with the members of the Scottish Youth Parliament?
Well, I think that's another easy one. So the answer is yes. No, I think I would enjoy working with the members of Youth Parliament. I think I've got a track record of working well with young people in youth groups and things. So no, I would look forward to that, and I would see it as you know, I mean, a part of the job that would really benefit me as well.
I guess that brings us on to our final question, which is, why should young people in Shetland vote for you?
Well, I think Scottish Labour and myself will give you a guarantee that you will not be left behind as we embark on this sort of post-recovery, post-COVID piece. So it starts with a guarantee that we will invest in you, and you'll have a place to contribute in Scotland. We want to sort of retain and attract the talent both in Shetland and across Scotland. So it's important that we send a really powerful message to our young people that there's lots of opportunity here, and even though things are very tough at the moment, the government has got the power to step in and to carry us through that toughness for a period, and young people are central to
that. Thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we get to speak to you again.
That would be great. I would very much look forward to that. It's been great meeting you both, Leighton and Jonathan.
Thanks very much.